I'm new to this game. We've not done introductions, have we? So I shall start with me and we shall work left. So I'm Councillor Anthony Smith, Chair of the Police and Crime Panel and elected member in Kirklees.
I'm Mark Smith, Deputy Leader of Kirklees Council, Reform UK.
Andrew Carter, Opposition Spokesman for Community Safety, City of Leeds.
Good morning, Councillor Del Rey, Labour Councillor for Leeds, Bramley, Stanley.
Councillor Dave Small from Colwell.
Councillor Thomas Garrett from Colwell.
Joseph Scully, Wakefield Councillor Officer.
Councillor Ewan Safdar, Kirklees Council.
Alison Waller, Deputy Mayor for Police. Tracy Braden, Mayor of West Yorkshire.
Wendy Stevens, Research and Performance Manager at Policing and Crime.
Morning, everyone. Rob Forrest, Head of Policing and Crime.
Trevor Lake, Independent Member.
Jo Science, Vice Chair, Independent Member.
Good morning, everyone. Councillor Oliver Edwards. I represent Guy and Rawton on Leeds City Council.
Councillor Stephen Broadbent for Bradford.
Morning, Councillor Howley. I represent Reform for Bradford and also Windle and Rose.
Hello, I'm Councillor Gareth Thomas. I represent Reform for Wakefield West.
Sharon Fraser, Wakefield Council, Legal Advisor to the panel. And Fiona Bernardo, Policy and Partnerships Officer.
Thank you, everybody. And apologies for my oversight there. So item 2 is the approval of the minutes from the 12th of June. Are there any comments or amendments from the panel? And if you approve those by a show of hands, please.
I'm happy to move them, Chair.
Thank you. Carried. Does that need seconding? Are we okay with the show of hands? It's fine. Yeah, thank you. Item 3, any urgent items? Item 4, members' declarations of interest. So item 5 is the Police and Crime Panel, priority 3, supporting victims and witnesses. Shall I ask the Mayor to introduce this, please? Thank you.
Thank you so much and congratulations on your election as Chair. It's really important for this and I'm really pleased that we have also members from Kirklees Council. So you are also welcome and I'm sure you've had very little time to study papers and so on, but we had our investment board yesterday and you had representation from Kirklees, so thank you so much for stepping up into a really important role. Okay, so item 5 is Police and Crime Plan Priority 3, supporting victims and witnesses. You know that this is a priority for us and it focuses on the delivery of the Police and Crime Plan, looking at Priority 3. And it includes information on the implementation of the Victims Code and ensuring that all victims benefit to their rights under the code. It's also included the work of the Combating Drugs Partnership Strategic Board and the Local Criminal Justice Board, and you know that Alison represents us on that. And updates are provided on the Victim Support Services, commissioned to support residents across West Yorkshire. And I'm also pleased that we have been able to establish 2 gender-specific survivor panels developed in partnership with organisations from the voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector. So myself, Alison and Wendy, very happy to take questions. And just for the panel's understanding, the police aren't available today because of various leaves and so on, so it will just be us, but we will not be able to answer questions on operational detail, obviously, because that is not our remit. Our remit is to hold the Chief Constable to account. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Questions from the panel? No?
I'm happy to go to ask a question if that's okay. I was interested to read about the progress around time. Sorry, can you hear me? Interested to read about the progress and improvements around timing through Magistrates Court. It'd be useful to know what work went into achieving that and what the timescale reductions are.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alison. Yeah, so there's actually been a specific group set up in magistrates that's been working on timeliness and effectiveness, overseen by the local criminal justice board E&E group, so efficiency and effectiveness group. You may recall 18 months or so ago Simon and I reported to this panel about all the work that we have been doing to revitalise the local criminal justice board, and part of that had been for West Yorkshire Police to do an end-to-end review of a victim's journey, and that highlighted several issues, both magistrates and Crown. Magistrates really embraced the opportunity to do things differently, so set up their group that looked at those processes and those different stages. We're working with Bradford and Leeds Crown Court to encourage them to do something similar, and Bradford have got a group that they look at their processes, and we're still in the process of having those conversations in Leeds, because we think that's been the difference, that focus, and so we're obviously holding them to account through the local criminal justice board, but we hope to see those improvements replicated in Crown.
Thank you. And are you happy in terms of the timeliness now? Do you think it's more towards what you want to see, or is there still work to be done around reducing the time from offence to court?
I'm never happy. Obviously, we need to improve. Well, even when we're the best in the country, it's still not good enough for victims and witnesses who, you know, obviously are very stressed waiting to get to court and give their evidence and see justice happen. So, however quick it may appear on paper, it's not quick enough for our citizens here in West Yorkshire. So we'll always strive to be better.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor
Yes,
Carter?
Chair. Two. I'll take a moment to go, if I may.
Absolutely.
If you look at pages 53 and 54 of the Manchester's Inspector for Salary report, I'd like to know how we are complying with the Victims Code. So, I only referred to the report, and I will come to it later, but I'm particularly looking at it in conjunction with how we're complying with the Victims Code. And secondly, on Para 6.2, Community Safety Partnership, realise it's in your gift, Mayor, and it's been frozen and for years, so I'm not making a particular point, except that effectively it goes down every year because of inflation. So, early notice of the position with the Community Safety Partnership funding would be very helpful. I'll give you an example. I informed our Community Safety Partnership that the budget was frozen following a meeting here, and they didn't know at the time, said we are waiting. And in difficult times, early notice is important when you're planning partnership working, such as the Community Safety Partnerships do, because they're one of the five authorities. So I'd like some reassurance. One, that we're going to get the Community Safety Partnership money, and that's down to you. But two, that whatever we get early notice to our partnerships to enable them to plan their partnership work properly.
Thank you, Alison. Yeah, so I'll start with the second question first. So the money that the Mayor gives to CSPs, Community Safety Partnerships, through this pot of money that we get from government called the Community Safety Fund, is a pot of money that belongs to the Mayor, and previously to that, Mark Burns-Williamson, who was the Police and Crime Commissioner. Many PCCs and Deputy Mayors choose to give some of that money or none of that money to Community Safety Partnerships. We have chosen to passport that money to CSPs ever since we came to office, just as Mark Burns-Williamson did when he was PCC. CSPs don't have a right to that money, but we understand that if they're going to help us deliver the police and crime plan, that they need some additionality to the investment that they are supposed to put in themselves, because they are the part of the crime and disorder reduction partnerships. They are part of that partnership that is supposed to be working towards safer communities. We tell every CSP in about December, January, what their allocation is going to be. As soon as we get told by central government, so we're always waiting for the very last minute to be told what the allocation is going to be. And as soon as we know, we send that letter off. It has been fixed for years, it's never grown, that pot of money has been the same for years and years and years. We always tell the local authorities that, you know, we don't get any more, so you're not getting any more, you're getting exactly the same as we get every year. And we give the entirety of that money over. Last year, we took a proportion of the funding off of them to pay for appropriate adults, and that's because the children's services, who previously had funded the appropriate adult service, decided to withdraw from that because they said it wasn't their statutory responsibility. It's our responsibility to have an appropriate adult service. It's not the main responsibility to fund an appropriate adult service. So we decided to top slice the Community Safety Partnership's share of the money in order to provide that appropriate adult service because we had no choice. In December of this year, in March of this year, we wrote to all our local authorities and confirmed that we told them in December they were going to get their allocation, but we said we were only going to give them the first quarter. And that was because we didn't know what was going to happen with our funding, because we hadn't been told. And also we didn't know what was going to happen with some commissioning that we needed to undertake at wider level. So we commissioned CARA, for example, which is a perpetrator scheme working with perpetrators of domestic abuse, men and women who are perpetrators. And we've got really, really high efficacy rates on that programme. So we're currently about 90% efficacy, so 90% of the people who go into that programme don't go on to reoffend. And when you've got 20% of all your crime related to domestic abuse, you need to invest in a programme that's going to stop that domestic abuse because it causes harm, doesn't it, to everybody. So we wanted to make it really clear that we were having to make some different choices potentially about our community safety fund. As it turned out, we got a little bit of flexibility in another budget, and we were able to then go to the CSPs and say, you're getting all your money for 26/7, but in 27/8, we don't know whether we're going to continue getting funding for CARA. There's some other commissioning we do, there's a women's safety unit, there's an opportunity from the national government to bid for quite a lot of that money, but if we don't get it, we're going to come back to you and deduct that money from that CSP money because we've got no choice. So in May, after the local elections, I personally met all the heads of community safety partnerships to go through what our potential intentions might be, which is our preferred places that there are no reductions at all, because we get that money from government, because we're putting in all these bids. The bids have gone in now for CARA and the other commissioning that we're doing, for example. If we don't get all the money that we need, which is about £800,000, that we will look to cut our local authority CSP grant. And we don't know how we're going to do that. We're going to co-produce that with the 5 local authorities. Those conversations have started, so we've asked them to tell us what they spend their money on. We had done a big piece of work in the previous 12 months, which demonstrated that 50% of the money that we give, so over £4 million, was being spent on staff costs, local authority staffing costs, and was not actually being spent on delivering the police and crime plan, but was being spent on in-house community safety partnership staffing costs. And I made it really clear that that would be the first area we would be looking to make those efficiencies, because it didn't really play the game. And you know, even though we'd been aware for a long time that that was probably what was happening, we didn't have the evidence that we now do. Our hope is we don't cut the CSPs at all, but we've made it really clear that if we do have to put them to deliver the Mayor's objectives, we'll do that in partnership, we will co-produce. That process is happening now, meetings are taking place, will continue to take place. We've put our bids into central government to defray some of those obligations that we've got, and we hope that that will pay off. But ultimately it's the Mayor's money. The Mayor has been very generous in giving all that money straight to local authorities. She doesn't have to do it. And if push comes to shove, we will use that money to deliver the Mayor's objectives. Thank you. Do you want to come back on that before I go on to victims?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for being so frank, even though brutally frank.
That's me name. Honesty is the best policy.
Well, on Wednesday of this week, Leicester Council passed a resolution relating to knife crime with considerable financial consequences for the Community Safety Partnership. And so what you've said is not welcome news to me at all, because I would think it puts in considerable doubt whether, if there were reductions in our Community Safety Partnership money from yourselves, we'd be able to fulfil the obligations the Council placed upon the Safety Partnership only on Wednesday of this week, and I suspect other local authorities will be in similar positions. So all I would say is I shall make sure that your message is transmitted back, because they need to plan now. They need to plan now. Partnership working doesn't happen overnight, and it can be stopped dead, which is extremely unfortunate. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah, and funding is secured till end of March 2027.
Well, no, I realise I'm talking about the next financial year.
And everything we're doing we're co-producing. So, and then victim code compliance. So as you outlined, the HMIC report was critical of the way that West Yorkshire Police complied with the Victims Code. It's important for members to understand that the Victims Code doesn't have a performance framework sitting under it, doesn't say how many days it should take before you communicate with victims. So West Yorkshire had, I think it was 56 days, they said you had to communicate with victims, which was a bit ridiculous and meaningless really, because it just meant that people kept on forgetting, officers kept on forgetting and forgetting and forgetting, and often victims were not communicated with. The force has now reduced that back down to 28 days. It was 28 days. The complaints was too frequent. It's back now to 28 days that they have to keep communicating with victims. We have a standing agenda item at our local criminal justice board on the Victims Code and the compliance. The problem is the performance framework is not there. The last government and this government promised us a performance framework that we can hold the force to account on, and each force nationally can be held to account on. That is not yet being developed, and the problem then therefore for us is that we're relying on external partners like HMIC to come in and tell us whether or not the code is being met or not. So we're now addressing this through our governance processes, which we have reviewed following the P inspection, and I'm sure we'll talk about that a bit later on. And we are asking for more detail on the Victims Code compliance, and we've got a way of doing that in a systematic way so that we can start understanding better what the force is and does not do in regard to Victims Code compliance.
But there's also a national Victims Code working group that we're part of, because this is not a problem that is just us.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is a national problem, of course, yes.
And a quick supplementary, so that will form part of your response on that particular issue in your formal response to His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, yes?
Yeah, we'll definitely be considering our response as we have to respond within a certain number of weeks, so we're working on that response now. And we've been given an opportunity on the new performance framework that's just been published to meet with HMIC, so we're trying to get a date in to meet with HMIC because I'd quite like to have the confidential conversation with them to triangulate some of the things that are in the report, which is now 6 months old, of course, because they left in February, to understand more about where we are now and what we should be focusing on more robustly.
Super.
Thank you, Alison. Before we move on, can I just... Yeah, okay, yeah. I just wanted to thank Wayne and the team for the reporting information that you've pulled together again. Just so you know, the panel did have a brief discussion about the value of these reports, and the consensus is we find them very valuable. I understand there's a lot of detail in there, but it is useful for us then to look at some of the headlines and then be able to get to that detail. So when they are clear to you, is please keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Smith, did you have a question on this item?
It was basically to do with Cara. First of all, is that in a pilot stage?
No, so CARA is a national programme that's been running for many years in many forces. Back in 2022, the then government decided that it would commission half of the forces, not all of the forces, to deliver CARA. Unfortunately, we weren't successful, even though we were delivering it really successfully here in West Yorkshire. And that's why, just going back to the previous answer, we're looking at the CSP fund if we don't get funded for it this year. We've put in the bid, it's an excellent bid, and we've got everything crossed. There was then a national evaluation that began under the last government looking at the efficacy of CARA. West Yorkshire was the only force in the whole country that could prove that from beginning to the end that we had at that point 71% of people who went through CARA who did not re-offend. No other force could do that because they weren't collecting the data properly. Since that evaluation has been completed, which obviously we've used in our bid, nobody else will be able to do that. I'm quite confident about getting the money for CARA, by the way, because nobody else could show that the efficacy is there, only we can do that. We've done our own internal evaluation. West Yorkshire Police have done their own internal evaluation, which shows 90% efficacy. So we think that CARA really works. There's about 700 people a year going through CARA, but obviously that's been funded by bits of money that we pull here, there and everywhere, and we hope that we get the funding so we can continue to demonstrate how brilliantly it works. And it prevents domestic abuse, which obviously costs a lot of money if we don't prevent it in advance.
Excellent, thank you. Not to that, no.
Okay. Any more questions? Trevor?
Thanks, Chair. My question is on 4.3. It's up there with the page on page 8. It's a sort of generalist question around victim support and specialist services, specialist support services. It's very good to see the number of contracts being awarded there on things going forward. But just sort of cross-reference with some of the feedback from the HNIC FRS report, which made reference to the fact that officers and staff, including MASH officers and staff, are not receiving training on various areas such as the CSODS, the Clare's Law and other areas. There's quite a number of sort of comments going from the meeting, which you're well aware of. My question is, how comfortable are you that you're going to be able to address those shortfalls with the projects and the contracts that you put in place here, and how will you ensure that it's resourced adequately and trained appropriately within the force?
I mean, just to kick off, I think Clare's Law is so important. That right at the beginning, since I became mayor, we were pushing not just Clare's Law, but also prevention orders and so on, that we were seeing an underuse of because of the lack of training. I mean, it is pleasing to see the numbers going in the right direction, but your challenge is right, that if the police officers don't have the training, how can they recommend it? But the question is how we then feedback in response to the report. We will definitely take that point with us, but it's something you'd like to add.
Yeah, so you can't see my notes, but I've got the whole Peel report and I've gone through it line by line, and I've got all these notes and we must do and we must, yeah. And so as a result of that, we've looked at all our governance processes because, you know, this wasn't good news for me either, and you know, it's my job to hold the police to account, and we had to look honestly at ourselves and understand what we could have done differently and better to understand some of the failings that were outlined in the report. I think it's fair to say that it was bad timing for West Yorkshire Police in that Op Rapid had been initiated in February 2025. And it was a bit of a disaster. Yeah, so Op Rapid was a different way of working with domestic abuse. So I've just explained, domestic abuse constitutes 20% of all crime in West Yorkshire. We have about 290,000 recorded crimes, so it's nearly 60,000 crimes. It's massive, but it has massive impact on the whole family, the community, children going to care, people are left homeless. it's got a massive societal cost. And with the best intentions in the world, West Yorkshire Police wanted to do something different and so decided that they would prioritise every domestic abuse call and put them in the call centre. They would be the first calls to be dealt with, and an officer would be sent within an hour. Brilliant idea. Came from a really good place. We talked about it here. Unfortunately, it had a massive knock-on effect in that it created huge backlogs, and some of the cases that weren't being dealt with as speedily as they could and should have been were serious cases, rapes, you know, I don't think murders, but, you know, rapes, you know, very, you know, serious burglaries, other serious sexual offences. And we actually identified in May, in our governance processes and the monitoring that Wendy does, we identified in the May, it started in February, that there was an impact on the backlogs and on the attendance priority calls. We raised that with West Yorkshire Police. They said the problem is that this new process has just started, it's having a short-term impact, it's all going to level out. We raised it again in July at the COM. It's all live streamed, you can go back and see that COM and understand and see that we did ask those questions, the same questions. And we were reassured again, yes, it's a blip, it's working itself through, but we're looking at I think they were doing a piece of work in Kirklees to try to do a bit of a pilot to see what some of those glitches might be. We asked again in September the same questions, and by November the scheme had been terminated in the form that was described in the report. So we did identify the problems with OPRAPID, and that obviously was part and parcel of some of the safeguarding and other issues that were raised in the report. So we've reflected on what we could have done differently, and we used to, some years ago, attend the FAM, the Force Accountability meetings, which were held monthly. We used to get all the data sets, but the previous deputy, for whatever reason, had decided that that was operational, and we didn't need to attend those operational meetings because we're strategic, and had asked us not to attend, basically. And we can't force ourselves into these operational meetings because we are strategic, not operational. So the new deputy has now, so if we had been attending those Force accountability meetings, we would have seen every month the figures going up and up and up and up, and we would have been a lot more vociferous, but we were seeing them 3 and 4 months in arrears. We've now been given permission to attend the new monthly performance meetings by the new Deputy Chief Constable. He's giving us all the data sets because we were given a very limited glimpse of the data the police wanted us to see. We're getting it all now. We're also being invited to the Force AFI meeting, so the areas for improvement is a board that the Force hold, and they look at all the different HMIC, His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, areas for improvement. We weren't allowed in there either about 18 months ago. We're back in, and so we're able to have absolute oversight of what they're doing. We've been asked to be active participants, not just observers. We've been asked to take part in the conversations about the work that they're doing in these governance meetings. But we've also upped our own governance meetings. So in terms of safeguarding, Simon, who's at the back there, former Chief Inspector, so he knows all the intricacies of policing, he knows what they're telling us and what they're not telling us. He's now going to be having monthly meetings with Head of Safeguarding. In fact, he's meeting Lee Berry, who's the overarching ACC in charge of safeguarding, moved from the previous lead, who was also the NPT lead. I think he was a bit too big before, so it's now moved to Lee. He's going to have some serious focus, which is brilliant. Simon's going to meet with Lee and meet monthly with the Head of Safeguarding, and that's going to inform all our oversight and questioning in our governance meetings, our quarterly governance meetings, our COM meetings, and so on and so forth. So I think we're going to have a much better handle of the detail. We're going to have a much of the operational detail, which obviously will then inform our scrutiny and oversight. For reasons that we could not control, there were things that we could not see. that is now not the case. There are more things we can see. I should also say that we've introduced a new meeting with the Mayor and Chief Constable, private meetings where they're going to meet twice a year, you know, to talk about things that need to be said in private between the Mayor and the Chief Constable. So that's also one of the new governance arrangements we've put in place as a result of what's happened. We are constantly now reviewing our governance to make sure it meets the needs of you know, our role and that it speaks to HMIC. I would just say in closing that this week we've been given information from HMIC about the performance ratings of each force, and I expected us to be a 3, not a 4 as far as you know, special measures, but I thought we'd be, based on this report, we should be at a 3. Actually, HMIC have been back to West Yorkshire Police. They've seen the progress that has been made. They talk about the progress often in the report, especially the financial work that they've clearly think is good. The work of the Deputy Chief Constable in bringing some clarity to the performance frameworks, etc. And they've now given us a 2. And a 2 is that, you look at the detail of the definition, is that there are no systemic issues in a force that's been rated 2. But obviously there are issues that need to be addressed, and there's a performance support process that we can now access through HMIC, which obviously West Yorkshire will do, and we will make sure that we oversee that, and we'll meet HMIC to talk about, you know, well, what do you really mean and what do we really need to be doing, and if you were me, what would you be asking, if you were me, what would you be looking at? Just as I did when I was chair of the Police and Crime Department.
And if I could just add, I think you can't overstate the change in that access, because it gives us real-time data and also an opportunity to ask those rigorous questions. It's really important. However, are we happy with 2? Of course not. The people of West Yorkshire want their the finest and the best. And where there are challenges, being able to be part of those requiring further improvement, we will be all over that, because that's where we can see the change, where we can be in the top tier, because we think the people of West Yorkshire deserve that.
Trevor, yes.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Alison. Probably don't want to go into the report that's later on the agenda, but I think it was important to cross-reference it. So
I would have done.
And I'm pleased that you've now got measures in place. I suppose there is a concern about how easy it can be to be blindsided on stats and figures.
Although we weren't blindsided, because we knew that the data was going the wrong way. We were fobbed off because we didn't have access to the data to be able to go back and say, hang on, and we acknowledge that, but we knew the data was going the wrong way, and we raised it in May, July, September, and then by November, off rapid was gone.
So clearly what's happened and changed now deals with that problem.
Yeah, and there's other things in the report that we identified, so PPNs, we were all over the PPNs, but again, you know, when West Yorkshire saying, well, we're doing this and we think that's good enough, or whatever, well, we don't agree, and we're getting feedback. Actually, the leaders were telling us, I meet the leaders every quarter, the leaders were complaining about the PPNs, and we were public protection notices, which is what, when West Yorkshire Police go into someone's home and identifies a potential neglect of a child or children, they will send a public protection notice to the local authority. But what other forces have been doing is that they will do their own investigations first and then send the whole file to the local authority. We were just sending the file we were just sending the PPN notice without doing the work first, and that was criticism of the leaders. I criticised West Yorkshire Police. We did it again. I could go through all the minutes because that's what we did with the previous point, but we could definitely point 3, 4, 5 times when we raised PPNs.
Yeah,
and if I could just add as well, what we look at for leadership is also the ability to innovate, and often innovation is stopping something that does not work. So where we can identify something that's not working, we will be challenging and saying, you've got to pull this, it doesn't work. So, you know, the same is true of, we were talking about community safety. You know, where we are outcomes focused, if those outcomes aren't being delivered, we're going to have to look at another way to do things. So innovation is the key to change, I think. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions about that? Councillor Ray?
Thank you, that's really good news. The one thing I'd say is it seems that having access to these meetings is really beneficial. Is there any way we can future-proof going back to the original system or the previous system where you're not getting that information and attending those meetings?
So as I say, the Deputy Chief Constable is very transparent, very open, is now giving us access to all these meetings, all this data. We don't foresee that being a problem, but obviously people change, don't they? He's just been appointed, so hopefully he's here for the long haul. And he's made his intentions very clear. I'm going to be meeting all the divisional commanders in a couple of weeks with the DEP, and I know that the purpose of that is about reinstating the understanding that we are key partners, that we work together, we need to share data. If there's a problem in a district, we need to know about it ASAP. There's no covering up, there's no, oh, well, let's see if it sorts itself out. We need to know, because then together we can come up with solutions. So, yeah, it works in a very different way, and that's good news for us.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No? Just as we move on to item 5A, again, can I just come back to Wendy? Could you just explain to the panel what's going on with the MSGs and the changes there, please, to provide that context?
Yes, there's been a re-look at the most similar groups, most similar forces, sometimes it's called. So what HMIC do is they look at a whole range of data from demographics right through to performance, that sort of thing, and then they plot all of the forces, and then they look at those that are most similar as close as possible. So for West Yorkshire, it's made a slight change in that we've lost West Midlands and Nottingham from our list, and we've gained Cleveland and Merseyside. Now, if you look on the map, what you'll see is Cleveland and Merseyside are tiny forces in comparison with West Yorkshire, and there is some question about some of the most similar forces, most similar groups, because of the obvious differences that there are there. But this is HMIC's look at it. So in the police performance framework that Alison mentioned, that is one of the ways that they look at police performance and how it changes. So going forward in the panel papers, I try to include it where I can. In the confidence data, you'll notice it's not there. That it needs looking right back to do it. So there hasn't been a chance since they announced them to be able to change that. But going forward, that's what we will be looking at. But it's more to reflect what's in the police performance framework, rather than say this is what we think is our most similar forces, because there are those differences.
Thank you, Wendy. So, Tracy, would you like to introduce this item?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. So we're moving on to item 5B, not 5A. 5B, the Quarter 4 performance paper and the accompanying matrix. There's good news that there's been a decrease in the number of overall bulk offences and domestic occurrences, and really encouraging that the number of, more importantly, the number of positive outcomes for victims and survivors has also been on a steady increase. And as you know, not only is domestic violence a really large part of the crime figures in West Yorkshire, but stalking is also a substantial number of incidences. So I'm really pleased as well to see the steady increase in stalking protection orders, and the force is managing currently 33. And as we've said many times on this panel, stalking is early indications of femicide. So 33 stalking protection orders might mean 13 women are going to be alive, when potentially there could be terrible outcomes for those women. There's also been a 6.3% decrease in the 12 months to March 26 in relation to hate crime. This is really welcome compared to the same time next year, but that's notwithstanding community tensions nationally over the last few months, so we'll see if that has had an impact on our figures here in West Yorkshire. Regarding confidence and satisfaction rates for West Yorkshire, again, pleased to say in relation to key indicators such as agreement that the police can be relied upon when needed, and the agreement that the police will treat you with respect, They are positive and above the most similar group, as we've just been discussing, now above that average. Victim satisfaction down slightly by 1.8%, but certain stages of the contact process showing increased satisfaction, such as ease of contact and CSI investigation. What's really important to us is to understand the public's views as well. So we'll shortly have access to 4 waves worth of data for the Your Views survey. We commissioned and worked with partners to design, and we're going to use those results to compare and contrast with national figures, and that will really give us the sort of voice and a representative picture of West Yorkshire. So I leave it there, Chair, and welcome questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the panel? Joe, yes, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just on section 3.1, just wondered if you had a bit more information on the last sentence there about the numbers being significantly up on the for the last 12 months compared to the baseline reporting.
Wendy? This is this. Yeah, the data. This is a really important point, and I'm so glad you raised it.
So we've had a look. Thank you for mentioning it. So what we've looked at is that we've seen in the panel how rapes have been increasing, haven't we? But stalking and harassment has dropped because of the change in police recording of malicious communications. So those have really dropped. So what we were seeing was a drop in rape and a drop in stalking and harassment. But what you'll see on the graph is an increase in other sexual offences. So we've had a look at that, and the increase starts in 2024, which coincides with the start of the Women's Safety Unit, alongside the West Yorkshire Police looking at the Opsateria, which was a project that was taken by the government to look at rapes and serious sexual offences and how they were investigated by the police, with the conclusion that the police were focusing on the victim and the victim characteristics and not as much on the suspect. So they were changing that right round and saw some really good changes in the way that the police dealt with these areas. So West Yorkshire Police brought that Opsateria method in, and at the same time they put in a policy about non-contact sexual offences, and it seems to be that the increases that we're seeing are non-contact sexual offences. So we've had a look at it, and there is an increase in AI images, as you all know, of young people, and what we found was that 45% of these sexual offences were reports by 11 to 20-year-olds about sexual imaging and that sort of thing, and those sort of things. So there seems to be a societal shift at the moment, because the Crime Survey of England and Wales tells us there's a lot of underreporting, but actually what we're seeing in West Yorkshire is young people more ready to report these sort of offences, which to me is a good thing, because it means we can look at it and that sort of thing. And that is that goes alongside, there's an increased proportion of new victims coming forward. So these are not the same people, these are new victims who are coming forward, and we're getting a similar proportion of new suspects as well. So we're starting to see a proper picture of this, but it seems to be that AI reporting, that sort of thing, which is, I know you all know, is national news at the moment.
Could I just ask, actually, a question to Wendy? So we've seen national changes on X and Grok, sexualising imagery. Those changes aren't reflected in these numbers, are they?
Not yet. So nationally they're looking at saying that these platforms shouldn't have nude images on them, but that's just coming in, whereas this, as we said, we started to see the increase in 2024. So it'll be interesting actually going forward if we see that decrease because of this measures. But as you can see, a lot of the crimes that happen aren't things that West Yorkshire Police are doing or we're not doing, but it's actually societal change that makes the difference.
And if I might just add as well, people will have their own view, but I feel strongly that banning social media for under 16s is a way that we can stop young people being exposed to this sort of imagery, because far too much of this is child on child, a 14-year-old boy and a 13-year-old girl, and those sexualised images coming into their phone, whether they want it or not, is just, it's absolutely astonishing. And also, if I may say, the way that we've moved from flashing, as when I was growing up, it was in the park, my sister, I mean, everybody I knew had somebody flash at them. And now, if you're an estate agent and you put out your phone number to someone, you're getting images that you didn't request in your phone. This is flashing, but by a different route. And we know through data and evidence that flashing is an entry point for further sexualised crime. So it is actually a catastrophe for our young people. We have got to take bold action, and I think these numbers are they're ringing the bell, and we've got to have those really important conversations at a national level. Yeah, anything you say, Alison?
Just a supplementary.
I would like to give that to Trevor so I can see.
Councillor Safra.
Thank you for raising those, Wendy, and your team for raising those really important points. I think, and this may not be a question for this particular panel, but presumably you're in contact with regional, local, as well as national government about education programs for young men, because sometimes you're right, it's criminals starting at a very early age that are taking young girls into confidence, and then sometimes it leads to stigma and shame, and certain young girls don't want to report this. So are we talking to Department of Education, are we talking to youth and teams, are we talking to central government about an education programme to stop young men going down this route?
Yes, absolutely. And members of the panel who've been here previously will remember that PolEd was a really a good programme when I first became mayor. I think it was about 60%, 40%,
no, 36%.
36% of schools were taking this free programme delivered to schools with the support from the police on a number of subjects to support consent, those sorts of tricky issues. But actually, we have understood the power of that programme, and now we have written to all the schools, all the head teachers, and now really pleasingly it's over 90% of all schools, 98% of all schools in West Yorkshire that take this programme, and it also can flex. So particularly we'll talk about water safety later. That's something that we can ask the police to deliver, but they are really focusing on sexting, sexual imagery, consent, respect, and also we're working with the trade union, the NEU, looking at misogyny in schools, that young boys are seeing the Andrew Tate content, and shockingly, a teacher told me that in the margins of some homework, a young boy of 8 years old wrote in, make me a sandwich bitch, to the teacher. And this is language that they're hearing online. So rest assured, boys are really important. That's why we have commissioned a piece of work about men and boys, men as and boys as victims as well, and levels of vulnerability, like you say, to bad actors who want to use them for their own ends. So it's a 360 challenge that is not just about keeping women and girls safe, it's also about keeping boys safe, but also enabling boys to become the men that we know that they can be.
And I think it's important just to point out that boys are also targeted online, and there's a growing number of boys being subject to sextortion online, and I don't have the data to hand, but I think, you're sitting there, you're probably nodding, I'll get it right, something like 25% of all the cases that are coming through, it's young boys, it's massive, it's emerging, it's getting bigger and bigger. So we're not just educating boys about misogyny, we're educating boys about how they can also be victims of exploitation in this way. So there's loads of work going on, and the more the merrier, really.
questions on this item? Okay, thank you very much. So item 6, complaints, West Yorkshire Police Office.
Thank you so much. Yeah, this is item 6 on casework and reviews on the complaints report. We produced a paper providing an overview of complaints and conduct matters dealt with by the police and crime team during the past financial year. 25-26, the number of review requests decreased compared with higher volumes seen the previous year. Review requests from complainants continue to be monitored, obviously to identify those emerging trends and improve understanding of complaint handling. Additional checks have been carried out to ensure requests are submitted to the correct relevant review body, and as a result, more time has been required to assess requests. Higher number have been identified as invalid before being accepted for review. And the report's accompanied by the police complaints paper detailing professional standards department update on complaints and conduct. And it's always pleasing, Chair, that there is no complaints against myself or the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cowles, if you have a question.
Resist being very sarcastic. Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Is this thing on?
Yes.
Good. It's almost impossible to extract from the accounts of West Yorkshire Police the costs to West Yorkshire Police and therefore the taxpayers of court costs awarded against West Yorkshire Police in failed court cases or court cases that the West Yorkshire Police have lost. That cannot be right. We're talking about public money. Why isn't it completely transparent and there in the account and not hidden away somewhere, which it legally must be, because it must be somewhere?
I don't know that I fully understand the question. So clearly, every force has claims made against it every year. We've got ongoing cases which we have oversight of. We get all the litigation matters brought before us every quarter, and we have a private session with the force solicitor so we can understand what position the force is taking and why, and we can understand the risk. Some of those cases the force will win, some of those cases the force will pay out because the barrister often will say, well, it's 50-50 and the cost of going to court is more than the payout. So local authorities do that every day too. And then sometimes the force will choose to defend and then we'll lose. I think it's really hard to say exactly count up all those costs because some are opportunity costs, some are costs are not incurred because they choose to pay out. And I think that there might be a way to capture some of that, but I don't know exactly how much that money is and how the police calculate it themselves and whether or not they can achieve the figure. So we'll go back and we'll ask West Yorkshire Police how they capture that activity and whether or not there is an opportunity for them to put it in their accounts.
Also, I've not seen that data collected by local authorities. I'm not sure it's a routine piece of data. And just to emphasise, you can't understanding how much you would lose if you went to court versus how much you pay out in this moment. I think that is very hard to capture, isn't it? What you're actually saving by not going to court, etc. So it would be interesting to know, for my own interest actually, if local authorities do this. But we can take that away, Councillor.
Sorry, Chairman. Making this far too complicated. I have to ask him for the reasons why we might have paid out. I'm sure West Yorkshire Police lawyers, solicitors will advise them and tell them when to move, when not to move. All I want to know is what the cost to West Yorkshire Police Authority is of court cases we either settle out of court or we lose in court. Just the cost in a financial year. Not why it's happened. Very simple. And you can't get the information through all manner of means, including FOIs. That's not acceptable. You're making it far too complicated. And I'm quite sure, Mayor Brabin, local authorities are equally as secretive But you can find out, and I want to make sure we find out in West Yorkshire Police as well.
If it goes to court and it's in the court arena, you can find out because the court paper's public. If there's a deal and a compromise agreement signed, obviously that's confidential on both sides. There's an NDA, it's confidential on both sides. And because these things take so long, you can probably work out which person has been paid out what sum of money and the breach of the NDA. We'll see what we can find out. This is not us doing this. We'll ask the question and come back to a future meeting.
Thank you. Trevor?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So on page 2, just a bit of explanation, if possible, a bit more detail. They've got it right, that the number of reviews has dropped quite a lot year on year. But there's two things that kind of stand out from the report. One is the percentage upheld, which is significantly up, and then right at the bottom is the number of working days taken to complete. I just don't quite understand why they would be up so much given the reviews were down.
Tiffany, do you want to... Trevor, would you mind sliding that over? Thank you. Introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. Tiffany Dusting, who's the Reviews Manager for Police and Crime Team. Thank you for your question. In terms of the average number of working days to complete a review, what we are seeing on a national level at the moment is that review requests, with the introduction of AI and also wider access to online materials, is that review requests are becoming a lot more complex, as well as, I'm sure Tanya will agree, the initial complaints that the Professional Standards Directorate is seeing. So we're seeing increased complexity regionally and nationally in relation to reviews and also complaints. So that accounts for the time taken to complete a review based on the increased complexity that we're seeing, and also the length of a review request. And then in relation to the average number of working days to complete a review, I think you can draw out from the fact that more are upheld, that it means that it takes longer to look into the reasons why, and we've actually increased our engagement with West Yorkshire Police's Professional Standards Directorate in order to identify in real time the issues that are causing the upheld number to be so high. So we're spending a lot of time engaging with our partners in Professional Standards Directorate to look at the root causes of why the upheld rate is so high, and also to look at how those problems can be rectified in real time. So it's taking longer to engage, have those conversations and ensure that for the complainant the right outcomes being achieved before we uphold the review, and ensure that the recommendations that we then put in place are going to provide the right outcome, and that the complainant isn't then going to need to seek further review. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you very much. I mean, obviously, going forward strategically, it's going to be an increasing area, isn't it? Because as more and more people become comfortable using AI, you can ask it to write all the things for you, and I totally understand that. Having used it myself exactly for something similar. So I think it's an area that the resourcing is going to come under huge pressure clearly going forward as a result of that.
Thank you, folks. If I may, could I just ask you to give us some additional context around the backlogging vetting?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we actually asked this question at the last governance meeting, I think, because obviously it's very concerning. I think is it 16 weeks or 20 where the person who runs vetting is actually sat there from West Yorkshire Police. Yeah, it's been problematic. They've brought in some additional staff. I think is it 4 new staff you're going to be bringing in? Jobs coming? Because West Yorkshire Police are here. And this is Tanya Wilkins, who is the head of PSD.
Hi, I'm Tanya Wilkins, Detective Chief Superintendent and Head of Professional Standards. So in terms of vetting, we've seen a change in the vetting APP, which is the authorised approved practice. which basically governs how vetting is, and that changed last year. And as a result of that, there's some changes in vetting, which basically meant that applications, there's more that you have to do when you're looking at vetting for people. So we did see an increase in the time that it was taking us to do applications, and what we have had quite a small vetting department for quite some time within West Yorkshire, but we've been able to manage with the staffing that we've had due to they were able to get through quite a lot of cases. And what we did see with the change in the APP is actually we then started to get a bit of a backlog because we didn't have enough staff to cover that. So basically what we've done is we've increased our staff. We've gone from 10 researchers to increasing that to 20. We have just started recruitment. We've got about 6 people that have started with us in the last month, so they're currently in the training phase, and we're going out for applications again in October later this year. It will take some time to train those people, to bring them up to standard, but we expect that within the next 6 months we'll start to see those backlogs coming down.
Okay, if I may, just ask you something. Is that having a material operational impact at the moment, or is that something you've been able to manage?
So in terms of material impacts, obviously people coming new into West Yorkshire Police, obviously it's taken them time to get through the vetting stage. So we're having to prioritise certain roles. So for instance, things like new recruits coming in is a priority for us. Things like detention officers, which we need, is a priority for us. So what we'll see is, although we've got an approximate time of around 16 weeks, for those priority cases, we're trying to get through those a lot quicker because those are people that we need in our organisation very quickly.
May I just add, Chair, that what has been really welcome, and particularly you all have been aghast at some of the reporting about the Met Police and vetting. I think it is welcome that there is increased vetting, and particularly random vetting, and if you move jobs, so there's an increased ask of the department, that not just here in West Yorkshire but across the country, that this is really important, because when people say, oh, it's one bad apple, etc., we should have zero tolerance. You know, whilst the makeup of West Yorkshire Police is from the general public, and there are bad people in the general public, as there will be bad people in the police, but we will be laser focused on making sure that the people who become police officers will have the correct vetting, and that we will know exactly that they are the right people for the job. And I think the random vetting is also a new addition, isn't it, Tanya?
We've started doing something called the annual integrity vetting review, which is done every 12 months. That's something that we've only just started doing last year. And what that means is, when you come into police, and you do get vetting for a set period of time, depending on what vetting level that you have. But every year now, we've got to do something called the annual integrity vetting review, which basically means we have a look at your vetting again. We run through checks of everybody within our organisation. So we ran it last year, and everybody had to complete it, and as a result of that we had over 2,000 change of circumstances. So what that means is somebody has either moved house or they've got a new partner, so we have to do checks then on that partner, the new partner and the partner's family. We've done it again this year, and we've seen a reduction in our change of circumstances. What we tried to do is to say to people, don't wait until the annual integrity vetting review comes up, tell us throughout the year, so that we don't have that massive backlog. So some of the backlog that we're seeing now is because we had over 2,000 change of circumstances last year. We've focused on that because that's where the risk is for us, because these are people that are in our organisation already, and if they have got a change of partner, that partner, you know, might be part of a crime group, we need to make sure we know about that straight away, so that we can obviously take any mitigating action that we need to. So I'd like to think that as time moves on and people get used to telling us when those circumstances change, we will see that reduction at the beginning of the year when we're doing that vetting review.
Thank you. I think I speak with the panel, so we'll welcome the changes to the vetting procedures.
Yes.
And it was just a question of making sure that you have confidence, given those wait times, that it was not having operational impacts on areas of priority. I also accept the challenges with the incubation period for new recruits, but it's nice to hear some timescales. It'll be interesting to see how that's how those figures move in the next 6 to 12 months. But thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I'm so glad you came. Thank you.
Are there any more questions on item 6 we're on. Item 6, yeah, we'll move on to item 7. So, item 7 is complaints, police and crime panel. Joe, can I ask you to introduce this one?
Hello, as Complaints League, just like to present this paper, which is just a review of the Police and Crime Panel complaints and misconduct procedures. So that you'll see us looking through the report, there are very minor changes around a role title to just clarify our roles and responsibilities around compliance and just put it to the panel to accept this proposals today.
Yeah, thank you. I think they're mainly technical changes, aren't they? Just a change of terminology. So if I could ask everybody to vote by show of hands whether they accept the changes. That's carried, thank you.
And then moving on, Chair, to the annual update of complaints received by the Police and Crime Panel. Just this provides our annual report on the complaints which have been received and those which have been recorded. And just for clarity, of the 32 complaints not recorded, one of those was asked to provide further information which hasn't been received. So the total 32 complaints were received, but none of which met the criteria for the panel to respond and deal with them appropriately. However, anyone who does make a complaint through the panel procedures is signposted and supported to direct their complaint to the appropriate body.
Thank you, Joe. Are there any comments or questions from the panel? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 8, grooming gangs inquiry.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair. So you'll have all seen in the press that recently Bradford and Keighley have been included in the first round of local area investigations undertaken by the Independent Inquiry into Grooming Gangs with Anne Longfield leading that inquiry. I am confused that Keighley is Bradford, but anyway, Bradford and Keighley. And alongside Oldham and London. Obviously, we've been waiting ages for this decision, and following Louis Case's report on child sexual exploitation, which was due last year. The investigations are going to examine how safeguarding agencies identified, responded to victims and survivors of child sexual exploitation, and more importantly, whether opportunities to protect these children were missed. You will know we've spoken about this on a number of occasions at the panel, that we help facilitate engagement between Baroness Longfield and representatives of the West Yorkshire Survivor Leaders Group, with a further meeting planned for the near future. A key consideration is the involvement of victims outside of the Bradford district. You'll know that we have called for the inquiry to look at West Yorkshire wide. The data indicates West Yorkshire needs to be looked at, not just specific local authorities, but we do believe that there will be victims and survivors who will feel that they are not being heard because they don't live in a Bradford or Keighley postcode. But it's encouraging, whilst we've pressed the inquiry on this, that they'll keep the scale and the scope of that work open and under review, and will consider whether a wider geographical area should be examined as evidence emerges. I'll leave it there because I know that the panel may have some questions.
Thank you, Tracy. Councillor Smith?
Is there any definite timescale as to areas such as Dewsbury, Huddersfield will be added to that inquiry?
As I say, I was the Member of Parliament for Batley and Spent.
Yeah.
I know the challenges, and I know that the work that's gone on across West Yorkshire and in Kirklees, I forget the name of the operation. Anybody remember? Tendency was a substantial good outcomes for survivors. And whilst we have over 200 people in prison currently, serving over 2,000 years in prison, there were a number of them from Kirklees, of those numbers, and I'm sure there are more to be found. So we have pressed Baroness Longfield on widening the inquiry, because you may be abusing Bradford, but you might live in Wakefield. So we have said, please take a West Yorkshire view, because the data also, there's high numbers in Calderdale, in Kirklees, etc. So we have got to, you know, sunlight is the best disinfectant, so let's do this job properly. But I am reassured that there is that, you know, that openness to widen out the review. But that's notwithstanding the work that's already been, you know, really that CSE focus on West Yorkshire Police has really driven good outcomes for survivors. But we, as always, will be led by survivors and victims, because whatever the politics around this, it is really important that we deliver what survivors want us to do. And more than anything, they want justice. Because they were abandoned as children, and it wasn't right what happened to them, and we're going to do all we can to make sure that they do get that justice.
That's good, thank you.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for agreeing to my request that this is now a standing item on our agendas. Hopefully there will be an outcome before we disappear into the ether. I understand that the original prognosis was there would be a result in 2028 of this inquiry. So the first question is that still the timescale? I'm very conscious that 7 months has gone by now since the last Prime Minister announced he changed his mind and there was going to be an inquiry, and indeed you're a record where he was not being in favour of the inquiry to start with, and at least to see you've changed your mind. I want to know, I understand exactly the issue about West Yorkshire, because I suspect it affects my area as badly as anybody else's, being on the border of 2 cities. What I don't want to see is the inquiry bogged down any further. They need to show flexibility to try and deal with this cross-boundary issue, which certainly exists. But come on now, the victims deserve justice. And pardon me if the public and a lot of victims are very sceptical about whether this inquiry will come to any conclusions in the timescale it has been selected and announced. And I want to be convinced that you will put as much pressure on as you can now that we have this inquiry to see it reach a conclusion, and hopefully continuing perpetrators brought to justice.
Thank you so much. And as always, I think this panel, I think, has the victim at the heart and place over politics, as always. I think, and that's why I respect this panel enormously, because this is not about finger pointing or point scoring. This is about outcomes for victims and survivors. So regarding the date, we are told 2028, but it has been slow getting underway. But however, we are meeting Anne Longfield, myself and the Deputy Mayor, in the House of Lords, and we will be pressing this point, and we will want to see evidence of real pace, because we have heard time and again from victims and survivors that a review that does nothing. Remember, we've had a national review on CSE, and the outcomes weren't. There was nothing that was then, apart from when a Labour government came in and we saw Yvette Cooper actually implement some of the recommendations, not all of them, some of them. And victims and survivors have said, to have another review that sits on a shelf is not good enough. What we want to see is we want to see justice. And for those of you that have read the report, as we have done, you only have to look at Baroness Casey's timeline of reviews over the last decade, 20 years, to see that a review does not necessarily mean that you get change in better outcomes. So that's why this is really important. That's why we set up the Victims and Survivors panel. We funded this panel, and we will be led, as always, by them, not by us or by our desires. We will be led by what they tell us, and I'm really pleased that the Deputy Mayor for Policing and Crime has met on a one-to-one with many of the part of that survivor leadership group to speak to them about what they want to see and their recommendations. We also, as you'll remember, hosted at Riker a meeting with that panel of survivors and victims so they could speak to parliamentarians to tell them what they wanted them to press in Parliament. So this is not just about us, it's about you as councillors, it's about parliamentarians and people in the House of Lords. We cannot let down survivors and victims again, and on our watch we'll do everything we can to make sure that they do get justice, and that this review will not be one of many that just sits on the shelf and people point to and say, well, we did a review, job done.
Yes, Councillor Charles.
Yeah, very briefly. The general public will share that view. They won't allow it to sit on the shelf. There has to be action this time, isn't there? We owe it. We owe it to the victims, and there are still many, many out there we don't know about yet.
Indeed, indeed.
So can I just say that the reform-led councils in West Yorkshire will most certainly insist that this matter is looked into and followed up, and it will be questioned and questioned, repeatedly questioned, until such time as we actually get a result. Because far too many people have been let down over a very, very long period of time.
And I'm meeting all the leaders, and I've met Bradford and Wakefield leaders already, and I have promised to facilitate a meeting with West Yorkshire Police towards the end of the year on CSE and the work that West Yorkshire Police have done, give them the data that they want. Obviously, we did it for MPs, all MPs about 18 months ago, so very happy to have a repeat of that session with West Yorkshire Police, and we're just looking for dates now, and we'll come back to the leaders. We're very open. This is something that we're really passionate about. As I said to the two leaders I met, I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. This is something that's really important to me too.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Thank you, Councillor Carter. Councillor Carter, we just got in a technical point first. I've not brought this forward as a standing item. I brought it forward to the agenda as requested. If I've misunderstood you, I apologise. But I'm quite happy to bring it forward to another meeting again if there's something that you feel needs discussing. So, just a technical correction.
Thank you. Well, it's not technical, it goes to the heart of it.
Yeah.
I requested a standing item on the agenda, and I request it again then, Chair, in public.
That's my misunderstanding, Councillor Carter. Okay. Tracy, if I may,
yes.
Can I just ask you, obviously the scope of inquiry is geographically restricted, as we've spoken about. What representations have you made on behalf of victims in the wider region to make sure that their voices are heard as part of this process?
Yes, thank you so much for that, because this is why we're saying it has to be West Yorkshire wide.
Yeah.
Because we have met survivors and victims of the most heinous crimes who are now disappointed and aghast, frankly, that their voices won't necessarily be heard. They are very upset. So we will, when we meet Baroness Longfield next Tuesday, as we've said from the day that the announcement was made that there would be a local inquiry, we said, right, okay, we're going to be as helpful as possible. We're going to lead from the front. We're going to make sure this inquiry comes here, and we're going to finally, as Councillor Carter said, finally get justice for those women. And they are mainly women who have gone through lives of trauma, because this is not just about that incident. And speaking to survivors who lost children, who were treated as criminals themselves, who have trauma that we could never contemplate ourselves. This is something that has to be addressed for the whole of West Yorkshire. We will make that case and continue to do so. But of course we will continue to engage with survivors and victims from wherever they are. And we will not just be limited to the survivors of Keighley and Bradford. They have a huge job of work if they're doing Oldham, London, Keighley and Bradford, but we will keep pressing that this is porous, that the abusers do not care about boundaries. It's a porous crime, and we will make sure that we also listen to those victims and their voices are heard through us and through their MPs to make sure that they are not invisible in this inquiry.
Yeah, I mean, could I just add that we're meeting the survivor, we call it the survivor, they call it the survivor leaders group. So a group of survivors of the crimes that are under discussion. We've also got a male version that we meet with, and there is an agendaed meeting 6 times a year, but while we were looking at the inquiry terms of reference, we met much more regularly. Started in September with the roundtable with the MPs, and then we've helped the survivors to write a document about what they wanted to see from the inquiry, where they wanted the inquiry to come. They did mention Dewsbury, they asked specifically for Dewsbury to be included, as well as other parts of West Yorkshire. We wrote 3 times to Yvette Cooper Woods, Shabana Mahmood Woods, and then to Anne Longfield Woods, saying the same thing, come to West Yorkshire, the whole of West Yorkshire. We've got the data to substantiate West Yorkshire, and we've got the voices of the victims of West Yorkshire. What's really good is that the survivor leadership group is now embedded in Anne Longfield's processes, engagement processes. So we're no longer part of that. She's talking to them directly. She's met them twice. Her team's met them once. She's met them once. So they've met twice. We've got another meeting in the diary, and they've looked at her engagement principles. They've looked at her terms of reference. They're feeding in. So West Yorkshire's voice is very clearly part of the inquiry now, and we have nothing to do with it, which is brilliant. It's the women leading, taking control of that. But we're going to talk about those victims who are not part of that survivor leadership group and the things that we know need to be asked for. And the data substantiates a West Yorkshire-wide inclusion into this inquiry, and we will continue to fight for that.
Thank you very much. Are there any more questions from the panel? Councillor Edwards?
Thank you very much, Chair. And I would absolutely endorse what other people have said about the importance of the West Yorkshire approach. And I think as well, I'm very, I have no doubt about your personal commitment to this as well. I think ultimately this will be judged, the success of this will be judged by the survivors themselves. Those are the people whose opinions matter the most. I think my question would be around the process. How can we make sure that all communities across West Yorkshire feel that they're part of this process, feel that their voices are heard, and also feel that they're part of the solution? Because I think all of us around this table want to see progress. We don't just want to see historic lessons learned, but we also want to make sure that this doesn't happen in the future. The conditions that can lead to some of the heinous and horrific things that we've heard about can be addressed for the future. So how can we make sure that all communities are part of that, and what are we doing proactively to involve a wide range of voices in those difficult conversations?
Well, initially, those wide range of voices are not part of the remit, in that it will be people in children's services, local authorities, police, and where there's been interaction with those children. But your point is really well made, in that this is also about putting right the wrongs of the past. And I would like to credit council leaders for over the many decades who have had their own local reviews. And I know that Bradford has had several local reviews that have actually brought in new processes, new safeguarding, and new demands on departments to make sure that we do not repeat the mistakes of the past. So what happened a decade ago, I feel confident that there is a very different landscape. But as we were saying earlier, that this criminality and this type of criminality is now, there's a large number of children abusing children. So it is not just, as I say, not looking in the rearview mirror about what we have to solve. We also have to be alive to the changes of this difficult and complex crime, and make sure that while we're looking that way, we are putting in place protections for our 7-year-olds at the moment who are going to be growing up children in care, children who are fostered, vulnerable children, to make sure that we as leaders don't repeat those same mistakes. So my understanding is that it's not a wider community conversation, but it will be those people who interact with children. Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely.
But we all have a part to play. There is nobody that does not have a part to play in protecting children in West Yorkshire.
Thank you very much. I think I'd like to move on now if there's no more questions. There's a quite substantial item next, which is the appeal inspection report.
Thank you. Yes, we've touched on this to some degree earlier on in the meeting. As you know, it was published in June. A synopsis was given to the board, focusing on the areas of improvement, which will obviously, as we challenge the Chief Constable, we will be focusing on the areas of improvement. And I think it is worth noting that West Yorkshire Police was one of the last forces inspected in 2023-25. and one of the first in 25-27. So it gives it's the last of the last cohort and the first of the new cohort. So giving us time to put into 18 months to put into train the recommendations. Also changes in the inspection methodology, as Wendy has described. The HMRC report is not directly comparable with the previous report, and they do say explicitly that that is the case. We are, as you know, as you've heard, we are now right at the heart of those areas for improvement, and we will be able to embed the recommendations working with the police. Anything else you'd like to add?
No.
Okay, just wait for questions. That's it.
Councillor Smith? Pass something on the
Yeah, this report shows that particularly investigating crime requires improvement. But from my research, the last 3 reports stated exactly the same thing. So if we're promising every single time that that's going to be looked into and it's going to be improved, why is it not?
Obviously, I'm not West Yorkshire Police. Our job is to hold them to account. And obviously, we focus on the AFIs, the areas for improvement, that are raised each year, each inspection period by HMRC. So we receive information on training for investigators, for all the competence of investigators. We've brought many papers here about people's personal development and how officers are made competent through those processes, and this board will receive plenty of papers on that. Ultimately, it's all about outcomes for the public, positive outcomes. At the last inspection, West Yorkshire had an 8% positive outcome rate. At this inspection, it was 10%, so there had been some improvement, but not enough. Given we'd only had an 18-month period between the last inspection and this inspection. In my last local criminal justice board, which was about 6 weeks ago, we were at 11.5%. Positive outcome rate. Nationally, as it said in this report, it was 12.5%, so that progress is maintained. As I said at the beginning, the timing of this inspection was not so good for West Yorkshire Police. I'm not saying that many of the things that the inspector found she wouldn't have found at any other time, because clearly there are things that they need to improve on. We have picked out all the really serious issues like investigating crime. I should also add that a lot of the problems about investigating crime is the number of detective vacancies that we've got in West Yorkshire. So every force has got a detective gap. So we've reported, I used to be the chair of the panel 100 years ago, it feels like now, and we would regularly talk to Mark Williams and the police about this detective gap and the fact that we're detectives. It's a serial issue for forces that no one wants to be a detective, because long hours, you've got a murder, you're working all days, all nights, it's not very nice. It's brilliant if you want to be a detective, but if you don't want to be a detective, it's not. And so we've introduced, West Yorkshire Police has introduced a direct entry detective programme, which is really good, but obviously you can't in year 1 be as effective as a 5-10 year detective who's got all that experience.
I don't think you can do it direct entry, and I thought as an ex-Met police officer.
But they're doing it. Yeah. So they're looking at all sorts of ways of bridging that gap. I think if West Yorkshire Police could get experienced police officers to go into the detective route, and you can of course go into the detective route through you know, neighbourhood policing or response or wherever it is that you happen to be, and you'd be gratefully received. But those officers know what it is to be a detective. They don't want to do it, thank you very much. It's a national problem. We need to make being a detective a bit more sexy, but it's hard because it is at the very, very aversive end. You see the most horrendous things. You work all hours. You don't have a lot of control over your time, and they just don't want to do it. That's why we've got the direct entry. Whether it's the right reason or it's the right route or the wrong route, they're having to try it out in order to bridge that gap. So the 2/3 of the way now to recruiting the number of officers that they need to recruit. Time will tell whether it's worked or not, because HMIC is in regularly, and the next report will be probably, you know, in our 18 months, so we'll see.
I mean, the nature of the job has certainly not changed at all. It's always been difficult. It's always required long hours.
I gather you're an ex-police officer. Yes, I do.
A long time ago.
It's different now.
But it was something to aspire to back in the day, so I find it disconcerting at the least to say that nobody wants to do it.
But the evidence is there. The evidence is there. Nobody wants to do it because there's a gap in recruitment, and there has been for 15 years. Yeah, and all those people who were on the panel when I was chair will concur this was an issue we raised over and over and over again, and it's not changed. Anyone who's watching in the public wants to be a detective, yes, please.
It's a wonderful job.
Thank you very much. Councillor
Well,
Pratt.
at the moment, we're with the detectives, shall we?
Yes, please.
The point Councillor Smith touched on, I just want to go back to, because you're at great pains in your report, as was the Chief Constable of his comments, to refer to the fact that this inspection has changed from the way the last inspection was carried out. Well, that's right, except it highlights a number of recurring faults that recurred under previous inspections. Now, you're right, it's your job to hold it goes to account, and it's our job to hold you to account. And the assurance I want today is that, actually, Mayor Brady, you too, you buy into the findings of this report, because it is a very, very damning report in all sorts of ways, which we probably won't have time to go into today, but we will at future meetings. In my experience, everyone has to answer to somebody. Everyone. And my concern about all inspections is that the inspected always, it's a natural reaction, I suppose, is to look for the good bits, find reasons why the bad bits shouldn't be there at all, and not actually buy into it. Unless you buy into it, you won't do anything about putting right what's wrong. So the first question to you is, do you accept that this report, with its serious areas of failure to perform, is right, and that you're going to do something about it?
Thank you. And of course, this is my job to do this. And we have to have a balance, don't we? That there are areas of innovation also that we should be that are positive. There are technical issues, whether that's body-worn cameras, etc., that can be resolved and take time, procurement, whatever. So there are things that are under train that need to be resolved. But I am reassured that there is nothing that is inadequate. So there are forces in the country that have that catastrophic Peel report. Am I happy with it? Of course I'm not. But I am reassured that this new change with the Deputy Chief Constable, this new transparency, we can be part of the solution for those areas for improvement. But we will never be complacent, Councillor Carter, ever. But we do understand, as the ex-police officers must do too, that policing is complex. The challenges are increasingly complex. We have a relationship with the Chief Constable that was challenging. There is trust and there is also confidence in the desire to put these things right. Because if you're the Chief Constable you do not want to be in, number 2, you want to be number 1. And we want to make sure that we do our part, play our part in making sure that those areas of improvement are focused on. And like I say, there are new ways of recording, and there are, for example, making data and collecting the data where there are errors in collecting data, so it looks like there's a skew in the numbers. The way you ensure that your police force then collects the right data, and we continue being one of the best data gathering police forces in the country, and sometimes that skews our numbers and it makes us look like we have more crime than other forces that don't collect the data. So we always have it's a complex lens through which you look at the Peel report. There are many variables that are part of it. So, of course, I am given the mandate by the public to ensure West Yorkshire Police is the best it can be, and I will continue to do so. But I also appreciate that the panel is a critical friend and will help us on that journey. Thank you.
Yes,
but you accept, don't you, that our constituents would say, having heard that answer about the data in particular, my baby, but what are you doing about it?
Well, as you've heard, Councillor Carter, that we challenge the Chief Constable in the public arena at the COM, which is available to everyone. We have one-on-ones with the Chief Constable. The Deputy Mayor chairs many different panels. We are active, informed and determined to deliver change. We don't sit on our hands. We are energetic to deliver a better police force for West Yorkshire. And I hope that you see the way that we answer questions, the way that we are transparent. We want to do the right thing for the public, and we welcome the challenge, and we welcome information and support from you as a councillor in your community to also tell us what the public is saying, because we can't be everywhere all the time.
So in detail, because obviously I do the majority of the holding to account. So immediately we saw the Peel report, which I had anticipated would be negative because the Chief Constable reported it here at the last meeting, but also we have had several conversations about it. I picked out the most concerning areas and we put questions to West Yorkshire Police at our very next governance meeting, which was within 2 weeks of the report, and asked for some urgent updates. So, for example, where it talks about some incidents of children going missing and 5 children come to harm, I asked for an update on that and a report on every one of those 5 children, which I got. We've now asked for a special meeting to be set up to go through every single one of the AFIs that have been identified, and that's going to be happening after the summer in September, so that's in the diary. I spoke to the Deputy Chief Constable and raised my concerns about our access to that operational level of data, which is why he then opened the door wide and said, what do you want to see? You can see it all, and that's when we agreed all those things. We looked at our governance, we had a separate governance meeting, and we said, how could we have known that before? Notwithstanding when we get access to all this data, what could we have done differently? I've sent this to the Chair, but we've updated our governance arrangements as a result. So, for example, as I said, we're going to attend the West Yorkshire Police HMI CFRS Strategic Board that looks at all the work that West Yorkshire Police are doing to address the AFIs, the conversations they're having with HMIC, pushback from HMIC, the challenges, all that detail and data will be reported there. Wendy will be attending that meeting. We're also now going to be attending the monthly strategic performance meetings, which takes place on the same day. And while we've previously received some high-level information, we're going to get the whole of the data pack. The quarterly governance meetings that I chair have also been reviewed, and as a result we've asked West Yorkshire Police to provide a holistic workforce report, replacing the previous workforce numbers with further detail. We want to know about recruitment of detectives, we want to know about well-being, we want to know about workloads, we want to know about all the things that have been picked up in this report. The Neighbourhood Policing Guarantee paper is going to focus on all aspects of neighbourhood policing, including the government grant, because that was picked up. We'll continue to receive the change report, which details the new project work that's been taking place, so we can understand the innovations, but also any delays to work that's taking place. Meetings for community outcome, minutes for the community outcome meetings, we'll continue to get that information, but we're going to reflect the appeal criticisms within the request now papers, so that the public can see us directly linking appeal to that community outcomes meeting. We've changed the remit for the Women's Safety Unit governance meeting. We've now got a delivery plan that focuses on points raised in appeal, so particularly around things like what's it called when you can ask about someone's DA history? Clare's Law, because we've been getting lots of data about Clare's Law. We're actually up 2,000 requests every year, which is great, but what we didn't know is about how the police is reporting that back, and that's a gap that we didn't know about. We've updated our Women's Safety Unit governance processes. In relation to safeguarding, again, I've talked about that additional safeguarding. Simon's meeting, the head of safeguarding, we're going to have those monthly meetings, and that will involve all of my scrutiny meetings, and then the formal bi-yearly meetings between the Mayor and the Chief Constable to understand and discuss issues privately that need to be discussed, as well as having that strategic oversight. So we've done this since the report's been published. The work is at pace, we're ongoing with it. I meet the deputy regularly. In fact, I've got him on a hotline, always talking to him about all the things I need to talk to him about. And then all those other areas of triangulation that I've had for many years, I'm going to continue those, talking to the Fed, talking to the unions, talking to staff, going out in neighbourhood policing, going out to senior leadership teams. That's why we're having a meeting with the 5 senior leaders from the 5 districts, with the Deputy Chief Constable, for him to reiterate, you need to tell Alison everything as soon as it goes wrong, so that we are assured that nothing's being hidden, and everything that they know, we know.
If I may just add, that is one part of the work, and that this is a holistic view as well. So what are other partners saying? So representing us on the Criminal Justice Board, probation, the VCSE sector, all of that other work that goes on alongside that challenge, so that we know exactly what others are saying are their challenges, whether that's local authorities and children's services. So a missing child is not just a police issue, is it? Is that child missing from a local authority children's home? Is it parental? Is it CSE? You know, it is a 360 look at the whole thing, rather than just only focusing on the police. Whilst that work is substantial, it's also really important, the other work that Alison does on our behalf.
And I think it's really important, just in finishing, to repeat that there's now a new performance framework that HMIC have just developed. It published this week. There's 4 levels. The definition of level 2 is enhanced support from the performance system will be available to prevent any deterioration in performance. This would apply where a force has some low-level, non-systemic issues which are improving but still require oversight on multiple minor issues. That is the definition of level 2, and that is where they published Yorkshire Police. Whereas I thought we would be at level 3, which is obviously systemic, all the rest of it, and I think we would have been there had it not been for the pace of the changes that the current Deputy Chief Constable and Chief Constable have brought in, and also some of the reassurance that we've been given about the pace of change from HMIC herself, who says in her paper that she is seeing change. The pace is welcome, the backlog is now gone, so we are seeing those green shoots. We're not satisfied, we want the field, we're going to be there waiting for the meadow and the flowers to bloom too.
And remember, that change has happened in 18 months, so the pace is really important as well.
Thank you. I understand, and I think the panel all understands as well. There's only so much you can get a statutory relationship with the police, and we rely on the goodwill and transparency of the police in order to provide us with that more detailed and wider picture. What is concerning is perhaps some breakdown in that with the previous deputy. although you were aware of it. I wonder if we get some assurances from the Mayor and Deputy Mayor that if you see that sort of breakdown in transparency on the horizon, you bring those concerns to the panel in the future.
Absolutely, 100%.
And I would just like to say one other thing. At the point when West Yorkshire Police was getting inspected by HMIC, serious organised crime also got inspected. They got outstanding at the same time. Let's not forget that.
Very briefly, because I'm conscious of time, we've got a few minutes left.
Really briefly. Congratulations to our officers and you know, the work that's gotten in. It's really good to hear there's green sheets. It has been highlighted about some workloads being excessive and occupational health.
And we've asked for that in our future workforce reports.
So you're confident that that is?
Well, I'm confident we've put the ingredients in place to understand what West Yorkshire Police are doing differently, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Safar, and then we'll move on. Thank you.
After thanking you for that update, and it's encouraging that we have some green shoots and seeing improvement. So after speaking to a number of mid-level officers from BLE backgrounds, they also are a little bit concerned about how the force will develop diverse and inclusive workforce. So what would be your suggestions to the force and the national government in getting more diversity in senior positions to instill confidence in communities?
Yeah, well, can I say that the Deputy Chief Constable, Oscar Arnold, is a great example of elevation of a person of colour into a really senior role. I think we're the first in the country, I would suggest. And as a new member to the panel, you won't be aware of the historic focus that we've had on the diversity to make sure that the police reflect the community they serve and the work that's being done. But Alison, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, West Yorkshire Police don't always get it right, and Councillor Carter and I don't ever see me email, because you never responded, but I did email you.
I know, they all know the email.
Oh yeah, well, I'm just saying that they don't always get it right, the positive action, and it's a point of criticism in HMIC's report that West Yorkshire Police don't always get the balance right between positive action and what's perceived as positive discrimination, which is obviously illegal, and the way that they communicate that internally I think is very important. But since Tracy and I have come into office, the proportion of officers who are BME is improved from 6.5% to 10%, which is massive. So we are going in the right direction, but when you think that 23-24% of our communities are from a black, Asian or minority ethnic background, it's not enough. But the way that we do it has to be sensitive to the force, it has to be sensitive to all those wonderful police officers and staff who are working hard every day and need to feel valued, irrespective of their background. So white officers don't want to feel that they're somehow second-class citizens, where all of them are equally valued. And I think West Yorkshire Police have been great at bringing in officers of colour. They don't always keep them. That's another issue, and that's why the stay interviews were so important. 409 stay interviews undertaken, and they've retained 403 staff through those stay interviews, which is brilliant. But we need to use the principles of the stay interviews for all officers and retain everybody. They're all important, we'll them all.
Thank you. If I could just add to that, what's also equally important, I would suggest, is that we also have a police force that has female members of the force, because this is also a way that we can make sure that the force doesn't, get vulnerable to misogyny because there's no female officers and female staff. So I am really pleased that we've increased recruitment, but also to the point about retention. If you do not feel welcome in a workforce, you will leave. So I am really also pleased with the numbers that we are seeing of female officers that are also staying, so that they can then work through into senior roles and so on. So it's a really important point that the police force should represent the community it serves, so you don't get there is no opportunity for any toxic behaviour of any type, because you have a mixed force that have a multitude of views.
Okay. Can I just be quick here? I will start a few minutes late and I'm very conscious of time. just ask the panel and the Mayor if everybody's happy for a 10-minute extension of this meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, and if we've time, then I'm happy to come back to more questions on this, but if we can move on through the agenda in the first instance. Is that okay with everybody? Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, just before I had a number of questions on that paper, and I appreciate the time that it's easy. How can we put it back on again at a later date?
Absolutely.
That's a good
And
idea.
putting out some strategic, you grade the answers you've had today. Got stuck into development.
We'll bring that to the next meeting, Trevor. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Paul, for being so understanding. Item 10, Mayor's response to any current issues.
Yes, thank you so much, Chair, for giving me the opportunity. In this hot weather, you'll know that tragically too many young people are drowning in water, and the Deputy Mayor and myself have been working with partners to safeguard the public from drowning. We've written to the Prime Minister. I intend to raise the issue with UK mayors to have a mayoral review of what we can do. The Deputy Mayor will be a keynote speaker at the National Water Safety Conference in September to talk about the work we've been doing in West Yorkshire. You've also had a meeting with the Professor of Water Safety,
Professor Tipton.
yeah. And also making sure that we really look at our offer on swimming lessons and ensuring councils have the support that they need to ensure that all young people get access to that opportunity. Also, I'd like to praise, there's a couple of young lads from Craven, but they go to a school in Craven, but they're from Bradford, and they saved a dad and his son from drowning. So, you know, we really are grateful for the public for their vigilance as well in these bodies of water. So the Deputy Mayor and I have also been leading on that whole system approach to women in the criminal justice system, and have funded an intensive supervision court in Leeds and Wakefield, led by a judge. And I want to thank colleagues for that delivery, because we know that when a woman goes to prison, the impact is not just on her, but her family and those children and their outcomes. So there is a number of women with very complex lives that if we can intervene with that holistic 360 view, we hopefully will be able to keep them out of prison in the long term. Also, the Deputy Mayor and I have authority to make decisions on pension forfeiture for police officers and police staff who meet the legal criteria, and recently determined a forfeiture of 35% on a permanent basis for an officer. And I support the Chief Constable's commitment to maintaining the highest standards of policing, and I believe that this the delegation responsibility provides another important mechanism to strengthen measures in place to address those who fall short of the standards that we expect. Pension forfeiture is a significant penalty that reflects the high levels of integrity, professionalism and accountability expected of those who serve the police and the people of West Yorkshire, and where officers and staff fail to uphold those standards and betray the trust of our communities, we'll pursue pension forfeiture. I think that will send a clear message that misconduct will not be tolerated. Those entrusted to serve and protect must meet the highest standards of integrity and accountability. And where they fail, we will use everything in our power to hold them to account. We also recently launched the Keep the Door Open knife crime strategy. It's a brilliant video, a young, talented songwriter, and it was released alongside our serious violence strategy. Gives focuses on the long, I just lost my voice. Focuses on the long-term consequence, that's Wendy, of carrying a knife and how that one decision can impact your opportunities. If we could share it, Chair, and hopefully you will also share. Thank you. Finally, round 10 of the Mayor's Safe Communities Fund. That's closed July the 3rd. This is going to support projects and interventions which help deliver priorities and themes in the Police and Crime Plan. 173 applications into that fund. That's an independent advisory board, nothing to do with the Deputy Mayor and myself, and they'll be scored there. And we also fast-track projects who reach the You Decide event stage of our People's Fund process into this round of the Mayor's Safe Community Fund. You'll remember that it was £500,000, 100,000 per local authority, and the people decided what projects they wanted to fund that supported us tackling serious violence. And these projects are also currently reviewed by the board, and the outcome will be the 21st of September. So please do share the information about Keep the Door Open, the video. It comes on the back of our Just Don't video campaign that was very impactful and used by partners across West Yorkshire in a substantial way, and many sports clubs, youth clubs, etc., universities, colleges used that, and I hope they're going to do the same with this really great video, and also obviously sharing Safe Communities Fund rounds as they come to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll take any questions or comments on this item. Thank you very much for the update. Item 11, published key decisions. That's just for information, just for noting. Item 12, the agreed action notes. Again, I think that's just for noting unless anybody has any comments. Trevor?
I don't know what the issues about getting involved with legal information.
The lever information? No. Trevor? Oh, you're talking about... Yeah, so what happened was... sorry.
That's right.
We have, as Alison mentioned, we have a workforce paper that comes to our governance meetings. So it was my fault, I understood from panel that you wanted about leavers information. We particularly had highlighted about the new officers leaving, and we were seeing an increased number of those. So I asked for the governance meeting to have the information on all leavers, which you'll see in the paper that we've sent out, plus some information about new officers and why they were leaving. Turns out some people came into the force not realising they'd have to work nights, that sort of thing. So they've now changed the process so that they make sure that people are really aware of what the job entails before they start, that sort of thing. But then this look at, you know, by length of service, that sort of thing, we then picked it up at the governance meeting, and they said they'd put it on the next workforce paper, which comes in September, so you'll have it before the next meeting.
Okay.
So, when you from that might understand that they weren't collecting that information or collating it, and so there's been a delay in actually getting the information from the force, is that correct?
They collate the information, they've had it, it was just the ask from us. And as the panel be aware, we like to take these things through governance meetings, so that we can, you know, tell you the most up-to-date information possible.
So,
thank you.
Sorry, just to be clear, are we going to get that outside of the meeting or on the papers for October?
I would suggest outside of the meeting, because there's a lot of things coming now to the October meeting, as we've heard, and with the less number of panel meetings, they are going to be more intense.
Yeah.
So
okay,
yes,
just for clarity, to close it down, so by the end of September we can expect to receive that?
Yes.
Thank you.
She says that, not me.
Yeah, it's coming to the September quarterly governance meeting, so we can send it out after that.
So, item 30. Yeah, forward agenda plan. Again, just for noting, unless there's any questions or comments.
May I just offer a suggestion? Is it possible to maybe extend, whether people want this or not, to extend these meetings with there being fewer meetings, but the content is so substantial, and as we've had to already drop a couple of questions, we are here to answer the questions, so we're happy to extend the meeting if you would find that useful.
Yeah, I think the general agreement from the panel, whether we start it early, finish it late, or whatever it may be.
How often do the weather won't finish at 12? Yeah. We'll say so on the paper.
Yeah. We'll take that in the discussion probably, yeah. If that's okay with everybody. Yeah. Can you get that off the floor, please? Thank you. Item 14, complaints received by the panel. No complaints, Joe?
There've been no complaint recorded since the last panel meeting, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Give it time.
Trying our best.
Item 15 is any other business, and I've not received any other business. Now, I did say we'd extend the second meeting by 10 minutes. We've got a couple of minutes left, so can I take a question from Councillor Carter or Councillor Smith? Councillor Carter.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
You know it's going to be the council, you should be prepared. Stay.
Yeah.
You saw my comments, or you heard them, because you...
I didn't see them. I heard
you
them.
emailed. Very concerned in this report when creating police officers, indeed ethnic police officers, raise concern that we could be open to accusations of positive discrimination and we don't want to put in a special position. And that brings me to the issue of stay interviews. You know, they're either open to all or open to nobody. And from what we've revealed, they are only available in West Yorkshire to two categories of people. Have you now ensured that you aren't open to accusations of positive discrimination, because as you have said, it is illegal? And secondly, that officers are able to have, and staff are able to have stay interviews, so that we can find out why it is they're wanting to leave and try and do something about it and do something about our retention rates. And that's my question.
Yeah, thank you. And as I said to you in my email, I don't understand why West Yorkshire Police did that. I think it was a misstep, a misunderstanding, and it was clearly going to make those officers who weren't receiving stay interviews feel that they weren't as important, as valued. Every police officer costs about £55,000 to recruit. You really don't want to be losing any police officers. Actually, West Yorkshire Police does exit interviews for everybody. Call them all stay interviews, please. I've said that to West Yorkshire Police, they're looking into it now. They acknowledge it was a very clumsy thing to do. Having said that, the stay interviews, 409 undertaken, 403 staff retained.
Thank you. Very briefly, Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Chair. Very briefly, I think it might be something to carry on to a future meeting, but there was quite a bit of interest beforehand in the section on managing frauds. So in terms of looking for areas of improvement. So it'd be helpful to understand in more detail, possibly at another time, about how the force is responding to these findings, so what the plan is moving forward, and also how the process is for vulnerable victims of fraud being improved.
Thanks so much for that. So fraud has historically been investigated by City of London Police. So it's been a national function, it's still a national function. So it was called Action Fraud, it's called something else now, Report or something Fraud, and it's still undertaken by City of London. And a very small number were undertaken locally by local forces, and they were referred by City of London to those local forces. It's been a ridiculous arrangement. Forces were top sliced to pay for City of London to undertake the fraud investigations. There wasn't enough money in the world to undertake all the fraud investigations. DA might be 20% of all crime, fraud is 40% of all crime, and that's nationally. So everyone has failed on this fraud inspection. You won't get one force that's done well on fraud, because it was only this inspection that fraud was included for the very first time. So obviously no one knew what the baseline was, nobody knew what the expectation was, so everyone's struggled. We did need to make sure that West Yorkshire Police understands its new roles and responsibilities under this fraud investigation, and also that vulnerable victims are having their needs met. Now, we do get regular updates about the work with vulnerable victims, and I can't remember the detail, and I'll send it to you, but in our last report on fraud, they told us about work with banks that they've been doing to identify fraud victims. We know that they've got, is it Scram and Go? So there's a video and a comic book that they've done for children around fraud, which is very innovative. There's quite a lot of work that they're doing with vulnerable groups, and they're very good at that. But fraud in its entirety, it's a mess nationally. City of London have got its new contracts now. I don't anticipate it's going to get any better, because the threshold for investigation is massive. we had an organisation, a mosque in West Yorkshire, was robbed of £3 million. City of London fraud team refused to investigate it because it wasn't serious enough. So you see that the public are not getting a good service when it comes to fraud. We need to make sure that they get the best service they can from West Yorkshire. West Yorkshire needs to understand what that looks like because it's a new responsibility. So that's definitely something we're going to pick up.
Also, how complex is fraud, you know, and how sophisticated. You might have seen this week Martin Lewis saying he was seconds away from being a victim of fraud himself. It's very, very compelling. So they're complex cases, international, offshore, global, China, India, wherever they are. They're, you know, not in the UK. And it's anti-devolution that it was held by the City of London, because we want to make the choices and solve the crimes ourselves and have the resources to do so.
Thank you very much, panel. Thank you everybody for your patience. I know we've run over slightly. Date and time of the next meeting is Friday the 17th.
9th of October.
Sorry, okay, it's wrong. It's Friday the 9th of October 2026, back here in your courtroom. Trevor?
We've also got the meeting with HMIC.
We do have
Are we still doing them?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you everybody. Have a lovely afternoon and a lovely weekend. This meeting is closed.